Matt Reiner. And Matt, I want to let you give your background and experience. This is the first time we've met. I'm happy to meet you and happy to be talking with you. And you're coming from Atlanta, Georgia today, if that's correct. I'm on the top of the mountain here in Evergreen, Colorado, outside of Denver. So I've got a little chillier weather than you do probably today. So, but anyway, Matt, tell everybody a little bit of your background. You have a heavy technology background, plus you're a partner with a big wealth management firm there with several billion in assets, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, no, well, thanks for having me, Stephen. Great to meet you. And I think temperature is all relative, right? Our warm here to y'all is cold to us. So
Yeah.
we're freezing our tails off down here, for us in the South. But my journey really starts, 27 years ago when my dad founded a wealth management firm here in Atlanta, and I joined it about 15 years ago. And um, at that point, my brother, I have an older brother who joined the firm as well. I was kind of the third wheel coming in. And at that point, really trying to figure out what my identity was and who I was. And, at that point, there's a lot of imposter syndrome of how do I create value in this family business and seen as something that's not just the owner's son. And so I struggled there early on dealing with a lot of imposter syndrome. And then about 8 years ago, we saw an opportunity to build a technology business, and it started as a direct-to-consumer business, kind of like a Mint.com budgeting app, and then we transitioned over to a more B2B technology business that was doing workflow automation for financial advisors. And in that experience, that really gave me kind of let me found my zone, I guess, my zone of genius. That's where the entrepreneurship, the leadership, the innovation, the technology aspect, that really kind of just was my home run, sweet spot, and gave me my opportunity. And so we ran those for about 8 years. And then I think the biggest thing that ever happened to me, and it was bittersweet, but probably the best thing was that those failed. And
Yeah.
I was able to have an experience on the other side while still being a partner at the firm. Um, but that experience led me to understand what I enjoy, where I think I add value, and created what my value was within our organization. And now, we are a 100-person organization with offices in 5 different cities across the country, and we have the opportunity to serve 4,100 families. And I'm helping to kind of lead the charge on the innovation and innovation front for our business for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, fantastic. And you've written what I saw 3 books. Tell a little bit about the books and what was the purpose of those.
Yeah, so a few years ago, we launched our first book, Ready to Be Rich, which was really when we were running our company, our technology company, for the mass affluent. And we have a mass affluent RIA here called Wealth Strategies, and that's focused on individuals that may not be targeted or desired by the large wealth management firms. And so we wrote this book about a budgeting mentality that we had created called the daily spend limit, DSL. And the whole idea was, how do you kind of create this Weight Watchers mentality into budgeting, and with the point system. And it was really a point in my life where I saw that health side working, and I wanted to figure out how to do it on the wealth side. And so we launched a book there, and had fun there. And then we've recently launched a series called Dr. Cole Cash Will See You Now. It's a business fable. So if you've read any of those Patrick Lencioni books, it's similar, or Who Moved My Cheese, it's similar in structure to that. And so it's a 4-part series with very short books, but we've launched 2 of them. The other 2 are written. I'm just determining whether I want to launch them, or maybe launch some of my experiences that I learned from running a technology business inside of wealth management. And those are all around how does the advisor show value? What is their value?
Recorded.
And helping advisors understand that and see that. And I want to, wave that flag. My mission is that I believe every human or every human being needs access to a human financial advisor, and I want to wave that flag for advisors. And so that's what Dr. Cole Cash Will See You Now. It's a business fable. Cole Cash is a psychologist for financial advisors, so it's kind of turning the tables on what we do day to day with our clients, and seeing the other side of it of someone doing that with us in our profession. So really fun books, short, easy reads that you can read kind of on a train ride or a plane ride or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and your main company is Capital Investment Advisors. Do I have that right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And the pace of technology, it seems like we're at kind of a hockey curve point here, especially on the artificial intelligence side. That's been a topic of conversation among the industry pretty heavily. It seems to me that there's an underestimation among advisors on how badly this is going to impact them, and on the other hand, a overestimation of how much AI can overtake the human component. And on the marketing side, I've been pitched and looked at every AI system, under the sun, and none of them really seem to do much. From my standpoint, they really don't do a good job of creating that human relationship, that human contact with somebody, if you know what I mean. They do a good job of automating what's obviously automated follow-up, but they don't do a good job of human contact. What do you see happening in the industry? Where do you see it going?
Yeah, I mean, I think the crystal ball is everybody's has their own prediction, and I think that predictions are all meant to be what makes what's of most value to whatever service or pitch that individual's providing. And I think that when you step back and just look at it, that we're in an inflection point with regards to technological innovation and more specifically artificial intelligence, in the sense of this point in time where the world as we knew it is no longer, and the world as what we will know is uncertain, and it's a really uncomfortable situation. And we can't predict the future because we can only look at what we know on the surface today, and that's very limited in nature. And so, I think that artificial intelligence, I believe, has a place in our day to day and our industry. The accessibility of it, the applicability of it, and the cost of it all line up to saying that this is a point in time where we're going to start to see more impact by this specific technology. There's applicability across, it's universal, it's cross industry, it's accessible now very easily. Anybody can access it, even on your smartphone, and the cost of it is free. I can go use ChatGPT for free. And so the utilization and what that leads to is the opportunities of how it can impact us in our day to day, in our professional lives, is beyond our imagination, because now you have millions and hundreds of millions of people that can create utilizing this technology and innovate using this technology. And the opportunity that comes from that is exponential. And so for someone to say, I'm not on any side of the argument, that it's not going to be impactful, or it's impossible to predict. I will say that I don't believe that it will replace the human being. I believe that if you talk to people that are developing this technology, building companies using this technology, it's never, artificial intelligence at a core, or any technology, has never been launched to replace humans. It's always been augment humans. The ones that want it not to take traction say that it's going to replace you, and the ones that do show that it's augmentation. But all technology has meant to be to augment people and help them be better at what they do best, and take off what they don't need to be doing, because technology can do it best. And yes, sometimes the pendulum swings too far to one side and you see the negative aspects of it. But if you take a break and you look back, our lives are better because of technology. Are there negatives to it? 100%. And I think that wealth management stands positioned to benefit greatly from artificial intelligence. And I think clients will benefit greatly because humans that they're serving them, will be able to do more of what humans do best, which is build relationships, and less of what humans don't need to be doing. Um, and will there be the rogue players? Of course. Will there be the rogue situations that are negative? Of course. The biggest challenge that wealth management faces, and that you've seen, I think, Stephen, on the marketing side, is will regulation keep up? Because
Yeah.
we are a regulated industry, regulation has been slow to keep up with the advancements with social and marketing and everything of that nature, and providing insights of what firms can do. And so I think it'll be up to the regulatory, of course, the side of things, to say, are they going to be able to provide us a framework that we can leverage this to help our clients, not just to say no because we don't understand it. And that's going to be the next step, I think.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It seems to me we could take it in any different direction, but probably the most exciting part of it is creating higher level productivity gains for individuals. So it's the if you look at ways that companies were structured in the 60s or 70s versus the way they're structured now, the head count in order for the level of productivity is way lower. The level of efficiency for each person, and I think that definitely, if it's utilized properly, gives each individual advisor and each person in a firm a lot more leverage, a lot more capability to get things done. On the flip side is I see a rush to systematize and automate um, out of the human interaction with people, and or to make the interaction corporate, not personal. Where I think what we all recognize is nobody cares about a corporation; they all care about a person. They care about the relationship. They care about that somebody's truly looking over their shoulder and concerned about them. And on the marketing side, I see people make I don't know 100 different mistakes on that. Um, but mostly they just automate themselves out of creating a relationship with a person, and that's always a mistake. Nothing beats meeting with somebody face to face. If you can't meet with them face to face, meeting with them on video. If you can't meet with them on video, talk to them on the phone. And no amount of a barrage of emails, barrage of text, and a barrage of automated follow up replaces that human connection. Never will. On your journey with the firm, it sounds like with the books, and of course I always take this from the marketing side. The books are mostly a tool for for client acquisition and for client creating the relationship with the client. Is that a fair way to describe that?
Yeah, and I would say for on our side of it, for me personally, it's more been about brand awareness
Mhm.
for the kind of the thought leadership that we're providing. It's not necessarily there. I know a lot of people, and I think that it's a great tool to utilize for a book to do client acquisition if you do it the right way and you have the right expectations. For me, it hasn't necessarily been for client acquisition for our wealth management firm. It's been
Right.
more for brand awareness, name recognition
Mhm.
within the industry to be able to, as I do a lot of speaking engagements and I do a lot of industry events, and to be able to go and have a book to provide to them is a great token to have to remember what we talked about.
Sure.
And that's what I used it as, is more of an investment into building a brand and a story, and doing it more towards the industry, so the professionals that work within the industry, and not necessarily client acquisitions. Now, I do have a business partner who has we've had a radio show here in the Southeast for 20 plus years, and he's written some books more geared towards our end client, and that's a
Okay.
different strategy, right?
Right.
On that side. And so him and I have two focuses because we think that there's a need to be positioned as we are a growing firm in both sides. And so we've seen it work on both avenues: brand awareness from a thought leadership side and brand awareness from a client acquisition side. And both have been really effective when you do it in the right medium. Again, expectations and medium are super important. And I think that people get into, especially writing books, the expectations are not aligned with the reality, and then that leads to frustration. And it's just, you got to have the right expectations and a very clear set goal of what you're trying to do and over what period of time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. As you know, throughout the industry, there's a whole cottage industry of people helping advisors write books. And mo I don't know if most is the right term, but an awful lot of advisors that end up working with me, they've done two or three books. They just had no idea what to do with them. And the fact that they have no idea what to do with them tells you that when they wrote them, they didn't know what angle to take on it. So it ends up not being very useful from that standpoint as well. I find for advisors not to get distracted on that topic, because it's a little off our topic, but there's so many different purposes of an advisor putting a book out. But as you said, if you're running a radio show for the general public to promote the firm, and you're using that as a gift for people who are listeners, something like that, that's a much different reason to do a book than perhaps you're doing something to mail to your own clients, perhaps as a pass along tool to anchor in your expertise to further build the relationship, which is again something different than industry thought leadership and sharing your expertise and your thoughts and so forth. And by the way, I subscribe. You've got a newsletter that you do, a number of other places that you're out giving thought leadership. Let's talk about that for a second, so we don't forget it. You have a podcast. Tell us a little bit about the podcast and the blog and where people can follow you and track you down, learn more.
Yeah, so I mean, written content is one of my passions. I love to write. I love to research. I have a thirst for learning and a desire for curiosity, and I love to explore and figure out how do we take concepts of things that we live in our everyday world back to our industry, and how do we tie them together to make them memorable. And I love to do that through writing and conversation. And so I'm very fortunate to have a podcast we've been doing for many years now called Bridging the Gap on all the podcast apps out there. And I'm fortunate to be able to bring on, people that are much smarter than me, and I get to have a conversation with them and learn from them. And it's a matter of how do we bridge the gap from where we are as an industry today to where it's going to be, and how you do that by understanding what's all out there, both inside of our four walls as an industry and outside of our four walls as an industry, and how do we bring all that together to help us get better. And that's what we do on Bridging the Gap. And then the email newsletter, again, super fortunate to have some people that want to follow and learn from some of the things that I've gone through, and that is called The Circle. It's a once a week email. Every Sunday is a kind of a framework or a chart with a post and a thought to ponder for the week. All of our content, like I said, focuses around leadership of self and team, innovation and technology. And that's what we focus on. And then we also send out our podcasts on a Thursday email. But these are just thoughts that I'm trying to figure out, things that I'm learning and trying to be curious of understanding based on readings and conversations. And how do I then distill it to others? And I've been fortunate to be able to do that through content.
Yeah, yeah. And how would they subscribe to the newsletter?
Yeah, so you can go to mattreiner.com, and that's where we post all of our content. And then you can also follow me on LinkedIn. I do a lot of posting on LinkedIn, and you can subscribe straight from my LinkedIn profile. It's just Matt Reiner, and I'd love to have you follow me there. We put a lot of good content out there every single day.
Excellent, excellent. Let's go back to some of your core expertise. I know you do a lot of speaking on team leadership, project management, and so forth. What do you see as the biggest failings within firms? Where do they miss the boat on building the teamwork environment, on utilizing their staff, on working with their associates? I mean, that's a big question.
Yeah. I mean, I think I think about kind of my experiences with our technology company, because we were doing a lot of consulting as we were selling into these companies and selling into these RA firms. And I was very fortunate to get exposure to many different firms, small firms, big firms, and medium firms. And I think it starts with there's this gap, I think, between where they are and where they want to be and what they need to do to fill that void. And what I mean by that is, size of firm dictates a lot of where you need to be. Some small firms don't need to be, they need to be efficient and operationalized, but they may not need to be as operationalized as a multi-billion-dollar firm. And multi-billion-dollar firms need more operational organization than a smaller firm. And the challenge that you see, and I don't think this is groundbreaking, this specific point, is as this industry has grown, we started growing just like my dad did, as a one-man shop or one-woman shop that just wanted to serve families and individuals, and ultimately created a business out of it and didn't know that's what their expectation. They were just doing this to serve people and sell and be an investment advisor. And now they have 10, 15, 20 people working for them, and they were just wearing multiple hats, and everybody in the firm was wearing multiple hats, and all the process and everything of that nature was in their own head. And now they're struggling with this growth and how to get everybody to do the process the same way. And that's the challenge, is that how do we distill processes and workflows from the founder's mentality into a standardized way that can be replicated and followed consistently, and then distilled into technology to automate and create some streamlined processes and efficiencies. and so what I mean that firms are trying to jump that leap is that they're trying to go from where they are with no process documentation, just doing it with the curse of knowledge. They think they know every single step, but they've been doing it so long that they don't realize every intricate step that's needed to be able to train someone new. And then they jump to trying to automate it with technology, and they get frustrated with technology because it's not just solving the problem, but there was a gap in between of really distilling down the process and all the processes and intricacies of that to then be able to understand which parts of those could be automated as opposed to just saying automate it.
Yeah.
And I think that that is a real challenge because we weren't trained on that as an industry. And it's not a wrong thing. It's just the where we are. We're an infant. I mean, RIAs are still in their infancy, and now you've got this trend with M&A and this kind of the pendulum swinging and more operational. And so we're trying to jump very quickly, but we're forgetting this major step, and it's super hard to do. And I always tell when I was telling firms, it's the peanut butter and jelly example. You ask 5 people how to make a peanut butter and jelly, and they're all going to tell you, but it's the curse of knowledge because we all know how to make it, but you don't really know each individual step. And if you were to sit and break down like the opening of the jar and opening the drawer and pulling out the knife, there's 60, 70, 80 steps in making a peanut butter and jelly, and everybody's like, you're crazy. But there is. And the amount of detail to automate that process, you need to understand each of those steps to be able to automate them the right way to create the consistency that's needed to create trust in brand and people.
Yeah, yeah. There's you had mentioned one of Ken Blanchard's books a minute ago, the Who Moved My Cheese book, and somewhere I think I'm attributing it to the right person. He talks about the learning curve is going from unconscious incompetent to conscious incompetent to conscious competent to conscious incompetent. And I was having a conversation a couple of days ago. We were putting together a sales script with a very highly competent salesperson, and I made the observation with him that his problem in accomplishing the objective was he was unconsciously competent at what he was doing. And he needed to move himself back to really analyzing the steps of what he was doing, jotting them down so that they could be replicated. And that's the system that you're talking about, is when somebody's created their own firm. I'm dating myself here, but years ago there was a great article in the Harvard Business Review called "Don't Automate, Obliterate." And it was the foundation of the reengineering craze. They did the reengineering the corporation. The Harvard Business Review article became the reengineering the corporation book. And the article was great. The book was, it was a good article. Let's put it that way. A lot of books would have been better off as an article. But it said exactly the same thing that you're saying in much lower technology era. Is so many times when people look to automate and they look to bring in other processes, what they're doing is replicating an old system. And especially if it's done by a founder who is now, unconsciously competent, they don't even remember what the steps are that they're doing. My background is in athletics and in martial arts and so forth. And the very top athletes really don't know what it is that makes them successful many times. They've gone beyond really thinking about the piece, whether it be football or martial arts or whatever it might be. The great coaches are the ones that analyze the steps and know what it is they need to do individually. It's why the top players rarely become the top coaches. But it's the same thing. It's so important. Again, dating myself, an old favorite book years ago was The E-Myth, and he talks about exactly that. And what I tell advisors, again, coming from a marketing perspective, is what's happening is their technical expertise is the stuff that AI is going to take over to a great extent. And what they need to be focusing on is not the technical, but the personal, the relationship build, the creating the relationship with people, creating the systems for creating that relationship. And too many times they're so focused on the technical that they can't get out of the way of recognizing that's the thing that's going to be productivity enhanced pretty quickly. What's never going to go away is the personal relationship.
Yeah, I mean that's spot on. And I always tell people when I say that we're working on innovating within our firm, and we built this out within our accountability chart specifically, is that everybody associates innovation with technology.
Yeah.
But innovation is not technology. It's a mindset, it's processes, it's workflows, and technology. And when we built out our accountability chart, innovation, the innovation area is not underneath technology. It's under transformation, and transformation has innovation and technology as two separate areas because they are two separate. Technological innovate a firm could become really innovative by having such detailed processes and following those processes to like the Ritz-Carlton way that the service is so elevated. And they may use zero technology or just the baseline technology, and that's innovative. If they can change the way that they processize and structure and consistently do it, that's innovation in my mind. And if they have a mindset of how they challenge and solve problems that's different than just getting up on a whiteboard and writing out solutions, that's innovation. But it doesn't mean that you need to have technology. And sometimes technology should be the last thing you use. And I would argue that it should be before there's so much more before that needs to be done.
Well, and what I see so many times with especially at the smaller end of the spectrum, is the technology gets in the way. So they try to mold their processes to whatever software, rather than make the software match their processes. I'd much rather have the right sales processes in place, the right client outreach processes in place. Then I'm going to figure out how to make the technology serve that, rather than vice versa. And as you well know from coming from that background, you were not in that situation, but most of the people who are putting together technology packages never have been on the front line,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the programmers and the system designers and so forth really are looking at the world from a very different perspective from the guy who's on the front line doing client service. And so many times there's a huge gap in the way that things need to be serviced versus the way they really are. I think in the big companies, there's an awful lot of gaps in culture and in presentation if they don't have the people in charge of that who's been on the front line and dealt with customer client reactions and dealt with the realities on the front line. How did you deal with that in your technology company and in your own firm now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say I dealt with it great. I mean, we failed. We had
Yeah.
to close the business, and so we didn't get enough traction. So I don't think I had the right solutions. I spent, a couple of days after we closed down and wrote 70 pages worth of learnings that I had failed at, and some succeeded at, but a lot of them were failures. So I don't know if I did it the best way. I think, the challenge that we faced was that we were solving a problem that we thought was a problem that may not have been a problem yet.
Yeah.
And we weren't great at helping them understand the opportunity because it wasn't a necessity for the business to be there. But the way that that we solved that or tried to solve for that was, I mean, we were solving problems that we face day in and day out. Now, the challenge that we ran into is everybody faces them in their own unique way, and our firm is although we all do the same thing, when you break it down and distill it down to the basic elements, we all do the same thing in our business. We all have our own unique twist, and you have human psychology issues of not wanting to give up control. You have formatting and setup of technology, and then you have the processes to get to that end solution are all very unique. And so although we came into it understanding the challenge of being on the front end and delivering and not making it dehumanized in terms of automation too much, there was a complexity that was involved that one, you had everybody doing something differently, and so the exponential processes and technology APIs that needed to happen were exponential. And then you ran into some of the issues that we weren't able to access or develop to all the technologies as fully as we needed to. So we weren't able to fulfill the full process. So then we were eliminated just from that. So I think it's a matter of if you are a technology company and you're looking to build technology for this industry, the one major thing I learned is if you're trying to do something different than has ever been done, you want to be integrated into something that's already being used pretty deeply. And what I mean by that is integrating deeply into the CRM makes it easier for the advisory community to understand what it is you're doing before you go out and build your own platform.
Yeah.
And I think that the challenge within the industry right now is that every technology platform, although it has always been said we're open and we want to build to and integrate to everybody, deep down every technology company wants to own the data and they want to own the experience. And so you've got this push comes to shove. And so if you're a technology company out there, I recommend if you're You integrate into someone else and get a board of advisors or an initial 5 to 10 raving clients that are willing to provide you insight, and go shadow those people, and shadow their day to day, and shadow them in the eyes of an objective person, not of a sales person or a product person, whatever it may be. Be objective and ask questions to how this is impacting their day to day. Not many people do that. They just solve what they are trying to say as the problem without understanding the true day to day, and it's unique, the day to day of our industry.
Oh, you bet, you bet. One of the I forget the term you use, the inside the four walls and outside or something to that effect. Um, One of the quote unquote marketing gurus that's been a friend of mine that I've worked with for years, Dan Kennedy, he he refers to it as marketing incest, and how he defines that is when everybody new in an industry looks at what everybody else is doing and just does what they do, rather than looking outside and looking at new solutions. And I've worked across industries. I mean, I strangely got started running martial arts schools, but I have in all the different types of businesses I've worked with, and maybe attorneys or CPAs are worse, perhaps, but financial advisors seem to be as bad as anybody I've ever seen on having blinders on and looking around at what everybody in the current industry is doing and not being able to break out of that box. What have you seen in your firm that's been some of the most successful things? You mentioned the radio show in Atlanta. What are some of the best new client facing processes that you put in place that have worked really well?
Um, Yeah, I think you nailed it in terms of, I think the challenge within our industry is that kind of following the herd mentality. And I think that one of the main reasons for that is not the community's fault, to be honest. It's the regulatory
Oh
environment.
yeah.
It's just there's a risk aversion. I call it innovation. We call our innovation workshop RISE. And the reason we call that is because that's the three forms of innovation that we see. There's risk averse innovation, there's speculative innovation, and there's exponential innovation. Risk averse innovation is all those types of innovation where it's like the following of the herd. Well, yeah, like of course it's a very risk averse for me to go to adopt Salesforce or Wealthbox or something of that nature because everybody else has already done it, and so I can do it. Speculative as you move up that curve, you have a higher likelihood of that innovation failing,
Hmm.
and we don't necessarily get fired for not gaining enough. We get fired when we lose money, and
Yeah.
so we have a risk averse analytical mentality, and I think that that's the challenge. And so for us, we challenge ourselves to look outside of what other industries are doing to attract clients, whether it's on a digital side. So we've brought on a full-time video producer, a video production staff. We built out a video production facility inside of our office, and we're constantly creating content that's tailored towards our end client. We've created 4 different podcasts that allow our clients to see and our prospects to see in the lives of our other clients. And we've also created we wave a flag and we're consistent with that flag. We want to help families find happiness in retirement. That is the flag we raise. That's what the books that we wrote are about. That's what all of our frameworks are about. That's what our advisors talk with our clients and our prospects about. And I think that when you think about what is a driver of client acquisition, too often we go and try to go to the tangible advertising methodologies, and you get it becomes a lot less effective because everybody else is doing it. What's effective and what separates, I think, firms in this industry when it's an industry of people doing all the same things of planning and investing is brand and investing in brand. Who are you? Who do you serve? And what flag do you want to wave? And then when you find that, don't veer off of that path. The moment you veer off that path, you create confusion. And confusion creates people to ask, like, well, what are they? And then once they ask that question, you've lost them. But once they know who you are and they're consistent across every medium, radio, podcast, book, content, website, there's a connection and understanding, and it's a simplicity of it, right? It's a very simple. We help families find happiness in retirement. I don't know how many words that is. I think it's under 7. People
Hmm.
understand that. We are the happiness firm. That's very simple. And I think that everybody wants to be happier. And so they're going to explore that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, to unpack that a little bit, I think the biggest thing that advisors seem to be afraid of is narrowing in on who they want to target, and they want to say everybody is my prospect. They also don't want to be as clear and as specific as what you're saying, for fear that they'll people won't be attracted to that, for fear of the people who won't be attracted to that. And I always say, if you're not super clear on what you are, you're not going to be attractive to anybody. And if you're not, in order to be highly attractive, you got to repel some people, right? So it's I like the format you um, who do you want to serve? Who are you? Being very clear on and I wouldn't necessarily use the word branding, but I think it is you're very clear on what you're talking about, which is be real clear on who you are, who it is you serve, what the purpose of what you're doing is, and then make everything you do congruent with that. Is a very important distinction there.
Well, and again, I think it's hard, right? It's always hard for us to say no, especially in an industry where you grow. If you ask advisors across the board, biggest challenge you face as an organization, number one response likely is going to be growth.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we then tell someone that you should hone in and narrow your focus, which could limit your growth, that's scary, and that's just human nature. You know, right on for people to have that fear. You're human. Congratulations. The question is that once you lean into a specific message, maybe it's messaging and not branding, then you find that you're being more authentic, and that authenticity and that vulnerability creates attraction that allows you to be more of who you are. And I did this one study just kind of internally of looking at all of different financial advisors' websites, and it becomes confusing because you look at them and everybody says the same thing. I help high net worth families, but you then think about like us in the industry, we think that that's super specific, but to our prospects, although we think it's specific, they don't, because they don't think that they're high net worth. They don't know what high net worth is. They put the figure on of $10 million while you're putting the figure on as 1.1 million or 1.5 million because that's industry metrics. They don't know those metrics. They're doing it based on what their perception is. And so then it creates this confusion to where you trying to serve everybody now limits who you're actually serving, as opposed to saying, I help early young dentists get their practice started and buy out next gen practices. Now
Yeah.
that's super specific, but now if I'm going to that website and I'm a dentist that's looking to buy out, I know I come to you. Like, you talk to me. And if I'm not coming to you, and that's okay because you're going to go deep with the dentist, and there's many of them out there. But at least you're attracting who you want to attract. And when you're trying to attract something specific, or you're trying, like you said, if you attract everybody, you go after everybody, you're going to attract nobody. And I think that it's a risk that we've seen work really, really well.
Yeah, and to pull out a couple things you said, is authenticity is everything in this business, and I think it's in rare it's rare anymore because everybody has a corporate facing, and they lose the authenticity, they lose the human element to it. The other side of it, to use the example that you gave, is I start from the standpoint of targeting with most of the people that I'm working with, and it's like, well, no, we don't want to draw a radius, a 10-mile radius around your office, and just hope for the best. We'd rather take what you just said: young dentists, established dentists, plastic surgeons, commercial real estate brokers. I have an advisor, and he's a German heritage. He's a Porsche fanatic. He's trying to collect one of every iteration of the 911 Turbo. Well, great. That in and of itself he can become the guy to the local Porsche club, the regional, the national, have a relationship with the dealer. It almost doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's a group of people that make sense. Uh, I have another friend who's done a great job on 50 to 60-year-old dentists, teaching them how to not have practice anymore. So get how to retire. He calls it freedom founders, how to not have to be behind the chair anymore. But until you narrowcast that, it's really hard to target the right people. And frankly, until you narrowcast, you don't have a message that resonates with them. The marketing concept is get inside the conversation already going on in their mind. And so if you're talking to a dentist who's 50 and is tired of practicing, or if you're talking to a dentist who's 35 and looking to rapidly expand, to use your example, it's easy to get inside that conversation where high net worth individuals, I mean, that's all over the board, right?
Well, you just think about that
Yeah,
Porsche, the Porsche the firm, for example, right?
yeah,
Like that's such a unique one. Maybe that market's too narrow, but I think there's something super interesting there. It's a matter of
yeah,
like, hey, I hope help car enthusiasts invest and stay an enthusiast of being able to buy more cars. And there's a strategy around how we buy cars, how we trade cars, and I've got all the relationships with all the car dealers that do the trading and I also invest your money, but I'm able to talk to you and service up material and content that's super unique and nichey to what you are, right? You know, I'm a passionate golfer, right? Maybe there's an opportunity to do just golfers, right? Golf
yeah,
enthusiasts and live the golf enthusiast life, right? Be able to travel, play all the golf courses, whatever it may be. People, I think, are again, it follows the herd. Well, I can't do that because it's not been done in the industry, and I think that that's part of the innovative mindset that I'm hoping to inspire. Is that
yeah.
you can try something different, and it can work, and we can do it inside of the regulated walls and do it the right way and serve clients the right way and give everybody out there an opportunity to have a human advisor that meets their needs and their desires.
Yeah, and although it's a highly regulated industry, there's not nearly as many shackles on as most advisors fear there are, I think. And especially when it comes to when you're not trying to compete on, I'm going to beat this person's return on investment and this is what it was. And I want my clients to talk about how I, grew their money faster than somebody else. But when you're really speaking to a group of people who are enthusiasts, who have a common, you mentioned websites. I've probably been through several thousand advisor websites now. And there's only probably three that stand out. I mean, of every website I've ever looked at, one of them, the guy was and I'm not a Texas Longhorns fan. I'm from Oklahoma originally. It's got the colors, whatever it is, orange or red or whatever the hell it is. The bulls on the thing with the big horns and everything, but you can't miss it. It's and he's and by the way, by talking to him and looking at the site, he was doing a really good job of working with alumni, of working with people at the school administration and so forth. But if I went to Georgetown, I could give a shit about the Texas Longhorns. But when I look at his site, I find it entertaining. I used to have a State Farm guy I worked with, and he was a Razorback fan, and he stood out. You think of 30 different people you work with that nothing's interested at all, and then there was John, who had the stupid red pig on his business cards and on his wall and the suey stuff everywhere. See, stuff like that makes you unique, makes you human, makes you stand out. And especially if you can find a sliver of people who are golf fanatics, who are Porsche fanatics, who are Star Wars fanatics, or if you can be highly specialized, so you're highly specialized for dentists or for plastic surgeons, or or pick the group of people. It's a way to stand out from the crowd and to really be highly attractive to a group of people, and frankly have more fun with the marketing side as well.
Well, when you can have more fun with it because it's something you're passionate with, you talked about earlier, your authenticity is going to be there, and just like it, the thing about this is that this is a relationship business. You build relationships by being authentic. You build relationships by being vulnerable. We do that in our day-to-day lives with our significant others, with our family, with our friends. Yet when we go professionally, we have to have this different mentality, and I think that that's the wrong approach in my mind. Just
Oh yeah.
be the same person you are with your family as you are with your friends, with you are with your clients, and I think you're going to attract more people that way. And you can consistently do that because you don't have to alter who you are at that point in time.
Yeah. Well, and all this research shows, it doesn't matter how deep you go, all the research shows that in a sales environment or in a service environment, it's more important that you like them and they like you than any of the other factors. Nobody is going to hire somebody that they feel is incompetent. But the advisors want to hang, and I know you have all the credentials as well, but they want to hang all their credentials and all that stuff up. But that's not really what makes people make the decision. That's the minimum level to make the grade to get in the door for somebody. And then it's about, do they like you? Do they trust you? Is there something interesting? And advisors who aren't getting referrals, by the way, well, nobody refers anybody who's not interesting. If I only think of my guy once a year when they reach out to me to have a meeting with them, But if their kids are doing interesting things, if their relatives are doing interesting things, if they have interesting hobbies, if they talk to me about things that I'm interested in, that's the people that stand out in our mind that then build that relationship and create a network of opportunity for you.
No, it's 100%, right? I mean, I'm not going to pile onto that. I agree with that drastically, and I think that everybody should try to. And the only last thing I would say on that is that when it comes to content creation, which is something that we didn't really talk about here a lot, but is content creation, everybody struggles with that. They don't know what to write, and I just tell them, write what interests you. Write about what you're saying to your clients or your friends or your family, and distribute that and do that in an authentic way, and you'll be surprised at how attracted people will be to that. And I struggled with that and failed at that early on. I tried to write in a voice that was what I thought the industry wanted or needed to hear, and I was fearful that people wouldn't be attracted to the way that I view things and the uniqueness and uniquity that I bring to it. And then I said, you know what, screw it, I'm going to write what I write about because I find it super interesting. And I think there'll be a market out there. You know what? There was. And there's a lot of people out there that are super interested in it. And I'm fortunate for that, but it's because I was authentic. And some people don't like it, and that's okay.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
perfectly fine with that. And I hope that they find someone that they are interested in.
yeah. Well, and that just as a last point on that, if you don't risk some people not liking it or being turned off by it or being repelled by it, you never become attractive for the people that you really want to be attractive for.
Yep. 100%. You,
Hey,
you
Matt,
got to take a risk.
well, we're about out of time here. We've been going a lot longer than I would have thought. What haven't I touched on that you'd like to hit before we run out of time here?
I think we touched on it all. What I would just say is I encourage, firms out there and professionals out there that are listening to this, to take a leap of faith on something and be okay with failing. Yeah, I think that our industry is is very much risk averse from failing, and I would never say put your client's money at risk. When I say fail, I say take a risk with how you do your operations and service and maybe a service offering, and be okay if it doesn't work out, because you're going to learn a heck of a lot when it doesn't. That's going to make you better and make your service better to your clients. So that's the one thing I would recommend. And